Everything was perfect. At least, that's what I thought. My name is Caroline, and like every woman, I dreamed of my wedding day since I was little. I imagined myself walking into the church in a stunning white dress, with all eyes turning to me. After so many failed relationships, I finally found Lucas. He was everything I had always wanted: handsome, affectionate, successful, and above all, he seemed to love me like no one ever had. Our relationship progressed naturally. Dating, engagement, and finally, the preparations for the big day. We chose every detail together: the flowers, the catering, the decorations, the guest list. Oh, the guest list. I never imagined that piece of paper would become the source of the greatest disappointment of my life. It was a Sunday afternoon when I discovered it. We were at his house watching a random movie when his phone rang. Lucas was in the shower, and since we were the type of couples who had nothing to hide from each other, I saw no problem in checking who was calling. The name Beth was flashing on the screen. I knew that name. Beth was his ex-girlfriend, the one he always said he had completely moved on from. Out of curiosity, I unlocked the phone. Yes, I knew the password. There were no secrets between us. Or so I thought. The message I saw chilled me to the bone. Thanks for the wedding invitation. It will be a pleasure to be there to witness this special moment. Kisses, B. My heart raced. An invitation to the wedding? At no point had Lucas mentioned inviting his ex-girlfriend to our special day. That day was supposed to be ours alone. When he came out of the shower, I confronted him immediately. Lucas tried to act like it wasn't a big deal, arguing that Beth was part of his past and that inviting her was just a gesture of maturity. We ended on good terms, Caroline. There's no reason for drama, he said with a calmness that deeply irritated me. Drama? You hid from me that you invited your ex to our wedding, and I'm the one making drama? I replied, feeling my blood boil. Maybe we should invite all my exes too. After all, we're mature adults, right? Lucas sighed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture I knew well. It was what he did when he felt cornered. Caroline, it's not the same. Beth and I have mutual friends. It would be strange not to invite her. And it would be even stranger not to consult me about it, Lucas. We're talking about our wedding. I emphasized the word our, because at that moment, I felt like he was making unilateral decisions about something that should be shared. In the days that followed, I tried to process the information. On one hand, I wanted to believe that Lucas was being sincere, that there were no hidden intentions in inviting Beth. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more behind that invitation. That's when I decided to investigate. I called Julia, my best friend since childhood, to help me. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked, worried. Maybe it's better to leave the past where it belongs. I can't marry someone who hides things from me, Julia. I need to know if there's more to this story. We started by scouring Beth's social media. It wasn't hard to find her. She was quite active online. Analyzing her recent posts, we noticed a pattern. Several nostalgic photos from when she was dating Lucas. Ambiguous captions that could easily be interpreted as veiled messages to him. In one of them, posted a few days after receiving the invitation, it read, "Sometimes, destiny gives a second chance to correct our mistakes." That doesn't prove anything, Julia argued, always more sensible than I. She could be referring to anything, but I trusted my intuition. Something was wrong, and I wouldn't rest until I discovered what it was. I decided to take a bold step. I contacted a mutual friend, Renee, who knew both Lucas and Beth from before I did. I needed information I couldn't find on social media. Renee hesitated when I asked her about their relationship. Look, Caroline, that was years ago. I don't think it's relevant now. Please, Renee, I'm about to marry him. I need to know. After much persistence, she finally gave in. They didn't exactly end things on good terms, like Lucas says. He was the one who broke up, and Beth never really accepted the end. For a good while, she tried to win him back. She showed up at his apartment several times uninvited. Lucas had to block her on everything for a while. That revelation was like a punch to the stomach. Lucas had lied to me. The amicable breakup was a facade. And now, for some reason I still didn't fully understand, he had decided to reintroduce Beth into our lives, right at the most important moment. Armed with this new information, I confronted Lucas again. He seemed genuinely surprised that I knew these details, but eventually confessed. Yes, it was complicated when we broke up, but that was years ago. Caroline, Beth has changed, I've changed. She's in a relationship now, moving on with her life. Then why hide it from me? Why paint a different picture of reality? Lucas avoided my gaze. Because I knew you would react like this. I knew you'd make it into something bigger than it really is. It was as if an invisible wall had risen between us at that moment. It wasn't just that he had invited his ex-girlfriend to our wedding without consulting me. It was that he had lied about the nature of their relationship, about how it had ended. He had anticipated my reaction, and, instead of being honest with me, chose to hide the truth. In the following days, the tension between us was palpable. Lucas tried to act as if nothing had happened, as if we could simply continue with the wedding. Preparations without addressing the elephant in the room, but I couldn't. Trust had been broken, and part of me wondered what else he might be hiding. That's when I made a decision. If Lucas wanted to invite Beth to our wedding, so be it. But I wouldn't be humiliated. I wouldn't be sidelined on my own special day. I decided to transform that wedding into the most spectacular event the city had ever seen. Beth wanted to witness the special moment. I would give her a spectacle she would never forget. I began planning in secret, with Julia's help. I hired a renowned decorator to redesign the entire wedding concept. The simple flowers we had chosen were replaced with extravagant arrangements. The catering was upgraded to include sophisticated dishes I knew Lucas loved. And the final touch, I hired a famous singer to perform during the reception. It was an artist Lucas and I had seen together at a show where he proposed to me, a symbol of our love that would now be displayed for everyone, including Beth. When Lucas found out about the changes, he was visibly worried about the costs. Caroline, this is a lot. We had a budget, remember? I gave him a cold look. Consider it an investment in our future, Lucas. After all, we want all our guests, and I mean all of them, to have an unforgettable experience, right? He caught the hint but didn't argue. Maybe he knew he was in a delicate position after lying to me. As the wedding day approached, my anxiety grew. Part of me wanted to believe everything would be perfect, that Lucas and I would overcome this obstacle and build a future together. Another part, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that there was more to this story than I knew. On the eve of the wedding, I received an unexpected message. It was from Beth. Caroline, we need to talk before the wedding. It's important. Please meet me at the cafe near the church tomorrow morning. I showed the message to Julia, who immediately advised against the meeting. This looks like a trap. Caroline, she probably wants to make you nervous before the ceremony. But something inside me knew I had to go. If there was something I needed to know before saying yes to Lucas, I'd rather find out before being legally tied to him. On the morning of the wedding, while I should have been getting ready, I drove to the cafe. Beth was already there, looking nervous. She was beautiful, I had to admit. Dark hair, expressive eyes, a smile that seemed sincere despite the situation. Thank you for coming, she said when I sat down across from her. I know, this is an important day for you. What do you want, Beth? I have a wedding to prepare for. So she took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. Lucas and I didn't just break up the way he probably told you. There were complications. If you're referring to the fact that he broke up with you and you had trouble accepting it, I already know that. Beth seemed surprised but continued. It's not just that. Lucas and I, we've met a few times after you two started dating. My heart raced. What? When? At the beginning of your relationship. He said he was confused, that he wasn't sure if he was ready for something serious again. She avoided my gaze. We stopped. Seeing each other when he realized he truly loved you. I respect that. I respect what you two have. That's why I thought you should know before marrying him. I remained silent, processing the information. Lucas had cheated on me at the beginning of our relationship with Beth, and now he had invited her to our wedding without consulting me after lying about how their relationship had ended. Why are you telling me this now? Why accept the wedding invitation? Beth seemed genuinely remorseful. Because you deserve to know the truth before taking this step. And because, she hesitated, there's something else you need to know. My blood ran cold. What could be worse than finding out my fiancé cheated with an ex-girlfriend he secretly invited to our wedding? I'm pregnant, Caroline, and the baby is Lucas's. The world stopped in that moment. It was as if the ground had been pulled out from under my feet. That's impossible. You just said you stopped seeing each other when our relationship became serious. We did stop, but we met again 3 months ago, during his bachelor party. It was a mistake. We were drunk. He reached out to me said he was nervous about the wedding, that he wasn't sure he was doing the right thing. 3 months. Lucas had slept with Beth just 3 months ago while we were engaged, while planning our wedding, and now she was pregnant. I stood up abruptly, knocking over the cup of coffee I hadn't even touched. "You're lying. You're trying to ruin my wedding. Why would I lie about something like this, Caroline? Why would I risk the life of an innocent child? I can show you the pregnancy test, the scans. Lucas knows. I told him yesterday." That explained Lucas's strange behavior the night before. He had seemed distant, worried. At the time, I attributed it to pre-wedding anxiety. Now, everything made sense. I left the cafe without saying another word, tears blurring my vision as I drove back to the hotel where I was supposed to be getting ready for what I naively believed would be the happiest day of my life. Julia was waiting for me, worried. "What happened? Are you okay?" I told her everything, my words broken by sobs. Julia hugged me tightly, letting me vent. "What are you going to do now?" she asked when I finally calmed down. I looked at the wedding dress hanging on the closet door, a symbol of what was supposed to be a new beginning, but now seemed like a cruel joke of fate. "I'm going to get married," I replied, to Julia's surprise. "What? After everything you've discovered? I'm not going to let them make a fool of me, Julia. Lucas wants me to be humiliated, for Beth to have the pleasure of seeing me destroyed. I'm not going to give them that satisfaction. Caroline, you're not thinking clearly. You can't marry someone who cheated on you, who is going to have a child with another woman. I'm not going to actually get married. I'm going to the altar, face Lucas, and in front of all our guests, I'll reveal the kind of man he really is." Julia looked horrified. "That's crazy. Cancel the wedding, Caroline. Send everyone away. You don't have to subject yourself to this." But my mind was made. The humiliation I felt had turned into anger, and that anger now fueled my determination. Lucas wouldn't go unpunished for what he had done. I dressed as planned, letting the makeup artist and hairstylist do their work, pretending an enthusiasm far from what I felt. When I was ready, I looked at myself in the mirror. The dress was stunning, exactly as I had dreamed. My hair was perfect, my makeup flawless. On the outside, I was the radiant bride everyone expected. Inside, I was a volcano about to erupt. We arrived at the church on time. I could see the guests entering, smiling faces, unaware of the drama about to unfold. I waited in the car while Julia checked if Lucas was already at the altar. She returned with confirmation that he was there, looking nervous. "Beth is here too," she informed. "Last row, right side." I took a deep breath. It was showtime. The music started playing as I walked into the church. Everyone stood up, gazing admiringly at the bride slowly making her way down the aisle. I fixed my gaze on Lucas, who looked like a mix of nervous and apprehensive. Did he know I had met with Beth? Was he wondering if I already knew everything? When I reached the altar, Lucas extended his hand to me. I hesitated for a moment before accepting it. His eyes met mine, questioning. I averted my gaze, focusing on the priest who was beginning the ceremony. The priest's words sounded distant as my mind raced. Was I really about to do this? Expose Lucas and Beth in front of everyone? Part of me just wanted to run away, leave that place and never look back. But the other part, the hurt and betrayed part, wanted revenge. If anyone knows of any impediment to this man and this woman being united in marriage, speak now or forever. Hold your peace. The ensuing silence was deafening. It was my cue. "Know of an impediment," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. All eyes turned to me, including Lucas's, who looked pale. "Caroline, what are you doing?" he whispered, squeezing my hand tightly. I pulled my hand away from his, turning to face the guests. "I would like to thank everyone for coming today. It's important to have the people we love by our side in significant moments like this." My gaze met Beth's, who seemed uncomfortable in her seat. "Some of you traveled far to be here. Some were specifically invited by Lucas, without my knowledge." A murmur ran through the church. Lucas tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand, silencing him. "I found out today that my fiancé, the man I'm about to marry, not only cheated on me with his ex-girlfriend, but also impregnated her. And she's here today, sitting among you, invited by Lucas himself to witness this." Circus. The church erupted in shocked exclamations. I saw my mother's face, horrified in the front pew. Lucas's father, who had always been kind to me, looked like he didn't know where to hide. Caroline, that's not true. Lucas tried to defend himself, but his voice trembled, betraying his lie. Not true? I turned to look directly at Beth. Do you want to tell them, or should I continue? Beth stood up, all eyes now on her. She didn't say anything, but her silence was confirmation. Enough. I thought of many ways to handle this, I continued, my voice calmer now. I thought of just walking away, of canceling everything. But then I realized that would be too easy for you, Lucas. You'd go on with your life, find another woman to deceive, while I dealt with the humiliation and pain alone. No. You deserve everyone to know what kind of man you really are. I slowly removed the ring Lucas had placed on my finger moments before and placed it on the altar. There will be no wedding today. There will be no forgiveness. What there will be is a woman who refuses to be treated as a second option, who refuses to accept crumbs of respect and honesty. I turned to leave, but before that, I cast one last look at Lucas. Oh, and that famous singer I hired for the reception? He's still going to perform. Consider it my wedding gift to you and Beth. After all, you have much to celebrate, don't you? I walked back down the church aisle, head held high, ignoring the whispers and shocked looks. Julia followed me quickly, holding the train of my dress. As we stepped into the sunlight, I felt as though a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Are you okay? Julia asked, worried. No, I replied honestly. But I'm going to be fine. That night, instead of being at the meticulously planned wedding party, I found myself sitting on the couch in Julia's apartment, still dressed in my wedding gown, a glass of wine in hand. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with messages and calls from concerned family and friends, but I ignored them all. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone except Julia. You were incredible today, she said, sitting beside me. You showed a strength that few would have. I gave a weak smile. I don't feel strong. I feel like an idiot for not realizing sooner, for believing his lies. That doesn't make you an idiot, Caroline. It makes you someone who trusted, who loved. It's not your fault that he betrayed that trust. I took a sip of wine, letting the drink warm my cold body. You know what's worse? Part of me still loves him. Part of me still wants to believe there's an explanation, that this is all a terrible misunderstanding. Julia held my hand. It's normal to feel that way. You don't stop loving someone overnight, but with time, that pain will lessen, and you'll realize you deserve so much more than Lucas could ever offer. I spent the following days in a state of numbness, alternating between crying fits and moments of intense anger. I received a few messages from Lucas, trying to explain himself, trying to convince me to talk to him. I ignored them all. What more was there to say? 1 week after the canceled wedding, I received an unexpected visit. It was Lucas's mother, Mrs. Helen, a lady I had always admired for her kindness and wisdom. May I come in? She asked when I opened the door. I hesitated but eventually nodded, allowing her to enter my apartment. If you've come to defend your son, I'm not interested in listening, I warned directly. I didn't come to defend Lucas, she replied, sitting on the couch after my silent invitation. I came to apologize for what he did to you and to thank you. Thank to whom? Yes. Thank you for having the courage to expose the truth, even in the most painful way. Lucas has always been my dear son, and as a mother, it's hard to admit his flaws. But what he did to you was unforgivable. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. I was surprised by her honesty. I didn't expect that from you, Mrs. Helen. I'm a mother, but I'm also a woman. I know how to recognize when someone has been wronged, and you, my dear, were tremendously wronged by my son. She took my hand in hers. I want you to know that no matter what happens, you'll always have a place in my heart, and I hope that in time, you'll find someone who truly values you. Her words were a balm for my wounded soul. They didn't erase the pain, but they offered a kind of validation I didn't know I needed. After she left, I cried again, but this time, the tears felt lighter, less bitter. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I went back to work, resumed old passions I had set aside during my relationship with Lucas. I went out with friends, laughed, cried, lived. Gradually, the wound began to heal. I heard from mutual friends that Beth had lost the baby a few weeks after the incident at the church. Part of me felt a perverse pang of satisfaction at the news, but that feeling was quickly replaced by compassion. No life deserved to be lost. No woman deserved to go through that pain, not even Beth. Lucas tried to contact me a few times, but I held my ground. There was no place for him in my life, not after what he had done. Eventually, the attempts ceased. I heard he moved to another city, possibly to escape the rumors and judgment that followed him wherever he went. A year after the canceled wedding, I received an unexpected invitation. It was for a small poetry event at a local cafe. The sender was Beth. My first instinct was to decline, throw the invitation away, and forget it existed. But something held me back. Curiosity, maybe, or the need to finally close this chapter of my life. I decided to go. The cafe was partially full when I arrived, a mixed crowd of young and old sitting at tables scattered throughout the cozy environment. Beth was on the small makeshift stage, reading a poem about new beginnings and redemption. She looked different, thinner, more serious, but also more serene. When she finished her reading, our eyes met. She seemed surprised to see me there, but soon her face broke into a small smile. After the event, she came over to my table. "I didn't think you would come," she said, sitting across from me. "Neither did I admitted. "But I thought maybe it was time to put an end to this story." Beth nodded, understanding. "I wanted to apologize for what happened, for my role in all this. There's no excuse for what I did, for what we did, but I want you to know that I deeply regret it." I watched her closely, looking for signs of insincerity, but all I saw was sincerity. What happened with the baby was tragic. I'm sorry for that. Thank you. It was difficult, but maybe the universe was putting things in order. She hesitated. "Did you know Lucas got married? To a girl from his hometown. The news caught me off guard, but it didn't hurt as much as I expected." "No, I didn't know. I hope he learned something from all this." "Me too." A comfortable silence settled between us. Two women who, under different circumstances, could have been friends, but were transformed into rivals by a man who didn't deserve either of them. "And you?" she finally asked. "How have you been?" "Better. Not perfect, but better. I'm learning to trust again, to make space for new possibilities." "I'm happy to hear that. You deserve to be happy, Caroline." There was a sincerity in her words that deeply touched me. In that moment, I realized that forgiveness wasn't just for Lucas or Beth, but more importantly, for myself. Forgiving didn't mean forgetting or justifying what had happened, but rather freeing myself from the weight of anger and resentment. I left the cafe that night with a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in a long time. The Lucas chapter was definitively closed, and now I could turn the page and start writing a new story. A story where I was the protagonist, not just the abandoned bride or the betrayed woman. 6 months later, I met William on a business trip. He was different from any man I had ever known before. Calm, self-assured, with no need for games or lies. Our relationship progressed naturally, without rush. I shared my past experience with him, and he listened without judgment, offering understanding and patience. When William proposed to me, 2 years after we met, the answer came easily and naturally. There were no doubts, no fears, just certainty. Certainty that this time, I was saying yes to the right man, for the right reasons. Our wedding was simple, just close friends and family. There was no need for extravagance or showiness. Happiness was in the simple details, in William's genuine smile when he saw me walking towards him, in the warm presence of people who truly cared about us. And when the priest asked if anyone knew of any impediment to our union, the silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. A silence that meant peace, acceptance, a new beginning. Sometimes, I think about what could have been if Lucas hadn't cheated on me, if we had married as planned. Would I have been happy? Or would I have been living a lie alongside a man who didn't truly respect me? It's impossible to know. What I do know is that the pain, as intense as it was, transformed me, made me stronger, wiser, more capable of recognizing genuine love when it finally appeared in my life. I never heard from Lucas again after I found out about his marriage. Beth, surprisingly, became an acquaintance, someone I occasionally exchange messages with. We're not friends, we'll probably never be, but there's mutual respect between us. Two women who survived the same storm and found their own paths to the shore. Julia remains my best friend, my pillar. She was the maid of honor at my wedding with William, and her heartfelt speech about journeys, falls, and new beginnings didn't leave a dry eye at the reception. Sometimes, she said, "The universe breaks our hearts so that new rays of light can enter." Mrs. Helen, Lucas's mother, attended the ceremony, much to everyone's surprise. She hugged me tightly before leaving, whispering in my ear, "You deserve all the happiness in this world, my dear. Thank you for showing me what true dignity means." 2 years after my wedding to William, I'm pregnant with our first child, a boy, whom we decided to name Gabriel. That brings good news, and as I feel his movements inside me, I can't help but reflect on how life is unpredictable, how the worst pains can lead to the greatest joys, how the most abrupt endings can result in the most beautiful new beginnings. If I could go back in time and speak to that devastated Caroline in the church, with a wedding dress and a broken heart, I would tell her to be patient, to trust the process, to understand that the pain, as unbearable as it seems at the moment, is temporary, and that on the other side of that pain, there is a life waiting to be lived, a life that exceeds any dream she could have imagined, because that's what I learned. True love doesn't need secrets. It doesn't demand sacrifices of your dignity or your peace. True love is transparent, respectful, liberating. And when you find it, there are no doubts, no fears, just the quiet certainty that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. My fiancé invited his ex to our wedding in secret, and what happened afterward, he will never forget. Not because I sought revenge or wished him to suffer as I did, but because in that moment of extreme vulnerability and pain, I chose myself, I chose my dignity, my worth, my future, and that choice, for a woman who always put others first, was revolutionary. Today, when I look in the mirror, I no longer see the abandoned bride, the betrayed woman, or the victim of a sad story. I see a survivor, a woman who fell but got back up, who was broken but rebuilt herself, who lost but found something infinitely more valuable in the process. She found herself, and that, more than any wedding, more than any relationship, is the true happy ending. The understanding that you are enough, that your happiness doesn't depend on another person, that you have within you everything you need to build the life you deserve. Lucas invited Beth to our wedding thinking it would just be a detail, a small secret among many. He didn't imagine that this seemingly insignificant act would be the catalyst for a complete transformation in my life, that secret invitation would, ironically, be the invitation for me to rediscover myself. If I could thank him today, I might. Not for what he tried to do, the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, but for what he inadvertently gave me. The opportunity to free myself from a relationship that diminished me, the chance to find a love that makes me grow. Sometimes, the worst moments of our lives are actually the best disguised gifts. It's hard to see them when we're in the middle of the storm, but when the rain passes and the sun reappears, everything becomes clear, crystal clear. Today, when William hugs me at night, when I feel the security of his sincere love, when I imagine the future we're building together, I know I've arrived where I was meant to be. Not despite my past, but because of it. Every pain, every tear, every moment of despair led me here, to this place of peace, love, and fulfillment. They say time heals all wounds. I don't entirely agree. Time doesn't heal. It transforms. It transforms acute pain into a scar that, though always present, no longer hurts when touched. It transforms hatred into understanding, resentment into wisdom, insecurity into strength, and that transformation is what I lived through. From abandoned bride to a fulfilled woman, from victim to protagonist, from a story of betrayal to a story of redemption. Lucas will never forget what happened after he invited his ex to our wedding, not because I made a point of staying in his memory, but because certain lessons mark the soul, certain experiences that define us. And that day in the church, when I chose truth over convenience, when I chose dignity over appearance, was one of those defining experiences. For me, for him, for everyone present. In the end, this isn't a story about a wedding that didn't happen. It's a story about a woman who did happen, who flourished, who discovered, through the deepest pain, the most authentic joy. A woman who learned that happy endings don't always look like what we imagine, but they are invariably more beautiful and meaningful than we could have dreamed. And if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. Looking back to that church full of surprised guests, to Lucas's pale face, to Beth's tears, I no longer feel anger. I don't feel sadness. I feel gratitude, because it was there, in that moment of extreme fragility, that I found my strength. It was there, when I lost what I thought I wanted, that I began to find what I truly needed. My mother used to say that God writes straight with crooked lines. I took a long time to understand the meaning of that phrase. Today, with Gabriel growing in my womb, with William by my side, with a peace I had never known before, I finally understand. The lines of my life may have been crooked, full of detours, obstacles, dead ends, but the final outcome is exactly as it should be, perfect in its imperfection, complete in its incompleteness, beautiful in its complexity. And if this journey taught me anything, it was this: don't be afraid of storms, don't flee from pain, don't shy away from challenges, because it is through them, and only through them, that we find our true essence, our strength, our light. Lucas invited Beth to our wedding in secret, thinking he was controlling the situation. What he didn't know was that by doing so, he was inadvertently offering me the key to my own liberation. And for that, paradoxically, I am grateful. Today, when I look into William's eyes, when I feel his gentle touch on my belly, when I imagine our growing family, I know I am exactly where I am supposed to be. And this certainty, this deep peace I feel, is worth every tear I shed, every sleepless night, every moment of despair I faced. Because in the end, it's not our falls that define us, but how we rise from them. It's not our losses that shape us, but what we choose to do with the space they leave. It's not our pains that determine our destiny, but our ability to transform them into strength, into wisdom, into love. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. The understanding that we are the authors of our own story, that no matter how dark the current chapter seems, we always have the power to turn the page and start writing something new, something better, something truly ours. Lucas invited Beth to our wedding without my knowledge, thinking it would just be a detail on our big day. He didn't imagine that this seemingly small act would be the catalyst for a complete revolution in my life, that selfish decision would, ironically, be the greatest gift he could give me, the opportunity to rediscover myself, to value myself, to find a love that truly deserves me. And for that, in a strange paradox that only life can create, I am eternally grateful.